Welcome to everyone. This week video will cover the Dow Jones Industrial Average for the week of June 16, 2025. Before we start, make sure you read carefully the disclaimer. If the actual 18-month cycle is matching the Hearst nominal model, the next 18-month cycle low will be in October 2026. If the 18-month cycle follow the actual length, which is 15-month, the next low can be expected in the summer 2026, certainly in July or August. Let's start with the 18-month cycle. Let's see the overall picture. If the September 2022 is the last 54-month cycle low, then we are in the last 18-month cycle of the next 54-month cycle, or 4.5 year. In this case, the October 2026 will be the best call. Usually the third 18-month cycle is less bullish, even more bearish than the previous two. The other option is by placing the last 54-month cycle low in October 2023. The actual 18-month cycle will be the second 18-month cycle of the next 54-month. Usually the second cycle should be less bullish than the first one, from October 2023 to the April 2025. When we'll know which degree is the next 18-month cycle? On the chart there is a black dashed uptrend line, from the 2020 low. When the Dow Jones Industrial Average will cross below it, this will confirm the next 18-month cycle is the third and last 18-month cycle of the next 54-month, and we can expect a bearish trend. Otherwise, it will be certainly the second 18-month cycle of the same 54-month cycle. During the April 7th low formation, part of the candle crossed below his cycle line, just as reminder, to trigger a valid signal. The midpoint have to cross clearly the cycle line, and not part of the candle. And this in any time frame. In the April 7th candle the midpoint was just on his cycle line. So there is no valid downside trading signal. From the trading point of view, knowing in which 18-month cycle we are is not very important, since there is always trading opportunity in bull or bear trend. Let's go now to the 40-week cycle. According to the Hearst rule of synchronicity, the April 7th low was also the 40-week cycle. And all the lower time frames cycle low form at the same date. The last two 40-week cycle have an average length of 38 week. On the Hearst nominal model the 40-week average length of 38.97 week. To know more on the cycle length, I recommend to go to my website, Tradingmarketcycles.com, to have a more in-depth information. Using the average length of 38 week, we can expect this 40-week cycle, forming a low during the last week of December, the blue vertical dashed line. The peak for this 40-week should form around mid-August. During the peak formation, the Dow Jones Industrial Average should cross above his cycle line and provide an upside target. Here the cycle line for the next few weeks, and their potential target if the market cross above his cycle line. Where the 40-week cycle peak will form, will give a very important information for the long-term trend. Crossing above his cycle line will be crucial information to see how much bullishness left in the market. The last time the Dow Jones Industrial Average crossed his cycle line was on the second week of March. The crossing point was 42,665, providing a downside target at 40,257. During the last week of March decline, the Dow Jones Industrial Average meet and exceed his target, forming a low at 36,611 on April 7th. Since the beginning of the year, we have one trading signal. This signal was positive and the success rate for the 40-week cycle is 100%. The 20-week cycle. For the same reason explained early, the last 20-week cycle formed on April 7th with a 36,611 low. Last week the Dow Jones Industrial Average crossed above his cycle line at 42,120, providing an upside target at 47,629. 5,509 point or 13% of potential profit. If the market reached this target, this will be a new record high, since the crossing above his cycle line is not very powerful. And despite the three bullish candles, we should take the new target with a grain of salt. From the beginning of the year, the 20-week cycle provide one positive trading signal, giving a 100% success rate. The last crossing occurred on the March 10th week, with a crossing at 42,500 for a 39,927 target. 2573 point or 6% potential profit. With a 36,611 low, the Dow Jones Industrial Average meet and exceed his target on April 7th. The next 20-week cycle is expected to form his low during the second week of August, and the peak should form about now. This may explain why the crossing above the cycle line wasn't very powerful, since the market is in peak phase. Technically, during the formation of this first 20-week cycle low, the Dow Jones Industrial Average should find support on his cycle line around 42,138. In this case, we can expect the Dow Jones Industrial Average move sideways for the next 2 months. If the market crossed sharply below his cycle line during this low formation, then we can expect further decline. Here the cycle line and their potential target if the Dow Jones Industrial Average cross below his cycle line during the next few weeks. The 80-day cycle. During the last 80-day cycle formation, the Dow Jones Industrial Average crossed below his cycle line at 42,800, providing a downside target at 40,546. 2,254 point or 5.55% of potential profit. With a low at 36,611, the Dow Jones Industrial Average meet and even exceed his target. Since this low formation, the Dow Jones Industrial Average rebound and crossed above his cycle line at 42,000 on May 15th, providing an upside 47,389 target. 5,389 points or 12.83% of potential profit. This target is very close to the 20-week cycle target. The next 80-day cycle low is expected now. In case the Dow Jones Industrial Average turn negative, here the cycle line and their potential downside target if the market cross below it during the next few weeks. With one positive and one negative trading signal since the beginning of this year, the 80-day cycle success rate is 50%. The first trading signal was on January 28th, when the Dow Jones Industrial Average crossed above his cycle line at 43,996 for a potential upside target at 46,148. 2,152 point or 4.89% of potential profit. The Dow Jones Industrial Average missed his target because he was in major peak formation, the 18-month cycle. The 40-day cycle. The last 40-day cycle occurred on May 23rd with a 41,354 low. This was the first 40-day cycle low since the April 7th major low. On May 1st, the Dow Jones Industrial Average crossed above his cycle line at 40,500. Providing an upside target at 44,389. 3,889 point or 9.6% of potential profit. The target is just below the 45,073 all-time high. The next 40-day low is expected now, on June 16th, and the next one on July 20th, the blue vertical dash line. Since the beginning of the year, the 40-day cycle gave two trading signals. The first one was on January 17th, when the Dow Jones Industrial Average crossed above his cycle at 43,024, providing an upside target at 44,204. 1,180 point or 2.74% of potential profit. 6 days later, the Dow Jones Industrial Average meet his target before making a high at 45,064. The second trading signal was on the downside, when the Dow Jones Industrial Average crossed below his cycle line on February 21st, at 44,359 for a potential downside 43,664. The target has been met rapidly since the market was forming his 18-month cycle low. The success rate for the 40-day cycle is 100%. In conclusion, the coming months are poised to be crucial for the markets, with several key cycles to monitor. In the short term, we need to pay attention to the developments of the 20-week cycle, which is expected to reach its low in the second week of August. This could create trading opportunities, especially if the Dow Jones Industrial Average manages to maintain support around 42,138. For more details analysis on the shorter term or to know how the cycles works in the stock market, I recommend to visit my website, tradingmarketcycles.com. If you enjoyed the video, please give it a thumbs up to support my channel. Share it with others, and subscribe so you don't miss any important updates. This concludes this week's video. Thank you for following along. And I'll see you next week with another exciting installment.